I suck at jujitsu. How do I suck less at jujitsu?
I guess to suck less.
Ladies and gentlemen, the diabolical leader of the head knot
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So, a few weeks ago, we looked at the bro science of visualization, meaning me just kind of giving personal kind of stories explaining this is what helped me visualization-wise. A lot of these ideas and learning to do this stuff came from my friend Jeff Shulze. And so Jeff is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he is also a doctor of something. I can't tell you what it is, but I know that it's definitely something that makes him significantly smarter than me when it comes to sports performance. And so in this episode, we really just sit down and talk straight through this idea of imagery training and how to do it better, how to do it more, and why to do it. And I think that this is some episodes we share as like, oh, this is such a fun listen, this is so funny or whatever. This episode is so helpful. This episode, the stuff that we talk about has helped me for years at this point. And I've gotten better at it, and it really is something like he explains it as a skill, something you need to be practicing. And I have been practicing that, and it's been so helpful for me. And so I thought that just kind of looking back and seeing the amount of listens that it has and going, oh, there's a lot of new I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners that just haven't heard this episode, and it would be very, very valuable for them. And so that is why we are recording this episode and why we're going to be hearing from my friend Jeff Shulze. There's also a second episode where we do a little more follow-up, and it was about 4 or 5 months later we recorded it. But that episode is somewhere in the 30s, I believe, and in that, I think, is also going to be helpful for understanding imagery training. But we also just talk about training method too, and very, very useful stuff in that episode. So if you enjoy it, there's a second episode you could be listening to. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. All right, Jeff, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you doing, Josh?
I am doing excellent. You know, we just had a nice rain, and I'm just hoping that the birds chirping in the background do not get on my microphone. I don't want people being reminded of the outside world at all while they're listening to this. Right. So just wanted to start out and just kind of ask you how you got into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So in high school, I had a few buddies that did it. One of my buddies was like Raja Shipman. He's pretty big down in the MMA scene in Australia, and we had a couple other friends that were doing jiu-jitsu and MMA. I was a knucklehead, started doing MMA, and I had a buddy. He popped my arm in an arm bar, and I was like, "Wow, that's good stuff. I got to learn how to do this." You know, arm was messed up for a while. I had another buddy named Charles Whitlock. He worked for Gracie Baja back in the day with Master Carlos Gracie Jr., and he worked for their clothing company. Got me a job just selling gis to people to the different Gracie Baja schools. And obviously, if you work there, you got to train. Well, you don't have to, but I ended up training, and it was a lot downhill after that. So just got a job, and my friends beating each other up when we were bored. So that's what got me into it.
How long have you been training for?
Goodness gracious, 2008, I want to say. Okay. So, yeah, like a decade or so.
Yeah, I think we probably started pretty close to the same time then.
Yeah. But you were a teenager.
Yeah, I was. I was a young pup. How old are you now, Jeff?
Oh man, I'm in my 30s. I'm Masters 1.
Oh my gosh. That's how jiu-jitsu guys talk about it. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm 32. It's like, yeah, I'm Master 1. And so, yeah, we just go in 5-year increments.
Yep.
So, what I just kind of wanted to, like we kind of have a basic idea of where we know we want this conversation to go, but I just wanted to
Hmm.
give a little more background on who you are and kind of what, differentiates you from some of the other people that we may have on the show. And so you are currently wait, are you in Wash? You are SLU. Where do you go to
I
school?
go to St. Louis University.
All right, so you're at SLU and you are currently studying.
I am currently studying PhD in clinical psychology, but I have a special emphasis in consultation, and part of consultation is doing sports psychology consultation.
Okay, so before we get any deeper than this, I mean, I know the answer to it, but let's say that somebody didn't go to college and they put all of their eggs in the jujitsu basket and they
Yeah,
don't know what the difference between psychology and psychiatry is. Is there a difference? What is the difference to that for those people? Not for me,
sure.
but for
So
those people.
first of all, disclaimer: I'm not very good at chemistry, so I didn't want to go to medical school. I went into psychology, which that's more like things that we can do with our mind and our behavior that we can change to. In particular in sports psychology, to improve performance or deal with whatever performance barriers we have. When it comes to, dealing with illness, it might be things like depression, anxiety, everyone experiences throughout their lives. So the way that we interact with our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, all these things, by talking about them and finding some strategies of how to cope with them, and then different activities we can engage in, these are things that we can do to change how we feel and feel better. And that's what psychology is. Psychiatry traditionally did all this stuff, but they also, because they're medically trained, they could also prescribe medication, and that's a big part of what psychiatry is involved in, is handing out medication, because there are illnesses that really require medication.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for answering that for everyone else. I mean, that was how I would have said it too. I would have said the exact same thing
Of
if I
course.
was explaining it to somebody.
Yeah.
But I just thought I would allow you to explain it, right? So I just kind of wanted to get right into it, kind of how this episode, how this interview came about. A lot of people, obviously, pretty much I assume everywhere in the world, but definitely in America, are dealing with their gym being closed, right? So we're dealing with the coronavirus. A lot of people are, probably a lot of people are dealing with much worse things than just their gym being closed. But for a lot of us jiu-jitsu athletes, we are like, man, gym's closed, I can't do anything. And
Hmm.
so myself, you, and a few other of the black belts that we train with, we all got together and we were kind of talking about, closing our gyms, talking about what we're going to do to be able to provide our students a service still. And you kind of mentioned, you brought up something that you called imagery training. And
Yes.
it sparked my interest. So instead of asking you a bunch about imagery training, I decided that I would ask you to do a podcast, and we could use this to kind of discuss it, and this platform to kind of talk about what imagery training is. And so, if you just wanted to give just a really brief overview, and then we can start to really get into it, and basically like how to get people. We're going to use it specifically for jiu-jitsu, but
Right.
how to get people better while they can't train.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that psychology is great for. Is it's interpersonally something you can do to work on stuff for yourself, and it doesn't take anybody else, and it's just taking mental time and energy invested in yourself, and kind of what's going on for you, and how we can find those skills to give you the most benefit from them. That's what sports psych is all about. So with imagery training, it's, like it sounds, you're imagining something in your mind, and that is going to have some kind of effect. And you're going to use it in a very particular way. And I'm going to go through those tenets of how to maximize the benefit from it, in order to, let's say, they use it for learning new skills. You can use it for arousal regulation, to excite yourself up or to calm yourself down, or you can use it to improve motivation, build confidence. It's one of the most commonly used mental skills that professional athletes use, and a lot of people don't know how to go about it.
Okay, so I feel like this is something that I know that actually I don't feel like it. I know that it's something that I'm going to benefit from just on this episode. So just to kind of get started, where would we get started if we are going to use it? Let's say specifically for right now, for the people that maybe for the next anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months aren't going to be able to train. How would we start kind of using that imagery?
So so what I think of is Renzo Gracie. Have you ever seen his documentary Legacy?
Yes.
Do you remember when in that documentary he hurt his knee? I think he was fighting Sakuraba or somebody. He hurt his knee, and or maybe he's even Carlos Condit, and he couldn't train because of the knee injury. And he talked about every single night I make a fight in my mind. And that's essentially what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be making a fight in our mind. And that's one way Renzo Gracie was able to maintain that expert level technique that he has and able to get back into it once he started, his knee was healed. I know conditioning wasn't there, but he was mentally sharp. And I think he mentions that his body was kind of slower than he would like in the video. So that's what we're going to kind of be doing. And I'm sure when you've been trying to fall asleep at night, you've thought about moves or positions that you've had during training. And did it make it easier or harder for you to fall asleep?
For me, I start to get too into it, right?
Yes.
And so I start to, it makes it hard. Is that common?
Yeah, that's very common. And I mean, it especially happens before competition too, right? You start thinking about, what if this happens? What if he gets me an arm bar? What am I going to do in this position? And it's normal that you'll feel your heart race, right? Your heartbeat will increase. And that all people do that. So let's talk about the specifics of how you can go about it. I mean, you have any kind of position. One of the best ways that you can start making it more realistic and more beneficial, there's a specific acronym. It's called PETLEP. So PETTLEP, right? I'm going to break it down. So that's going to be the first part, which is physical. So the physical element is going to be imagining yourself wearing the same clothes or holding kind of anything that you would be holding while you're doing your sport. I mean, obviously in jiu-jitsu, we're going to be wearing the gi and the belt and being on the mats. And the more that you can make that environment exactly as it would be when you're training. So like imagining head nod squad with the gray mats and what the room looks like and the windows, and then maybe even imagining the people that are going to be there. The more detail that we can put into it in that physical setting, what you're wearing and how you're going to be is going to make it a little bit more beneficial.
Okay. And
this basically relies on the idea that by exposing yourself to it in the reality that you train it, like your mind is ready for it when it occurs.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So, so specifically for us, I'm thinking just about, so you're just thinking about everything that happens. You're not even in training at this point yet, right? So you're just thinking about so when you say physically, you're not thinking about like the physical movement or the fight as much as you are thinking about just everything that's physically around you and on you. Is that correct?
Right. Yes,
okay.
that doing the task is going to come next. That's the T of the PETT. So the physical is just imagining, if you like to wear a rash guard, imagine yourself wearing a rash guard. If you don't like to wear a rash guard, don't wear a rash guard. You imagine yourself as wearing exactly the equipment that you normally like to wear. So the second one is going to be the environment, and that's talking about the mats and imagining what the place will look like. If it takes, like, some people aren't as sharp with imagery, and that's something that I'll say is just a disclaimer. Not everyone has this fully developed imagery ability yet. It's a skill that can be built over time. There's some people that naturally have just more vivid imaginations. You've heard of this before, I bet.
Yeah.
But if you need to look at a picture or look at a video or watch yourself rolling in a video first to go ahead and get like what that would look like in your mind's eye, people do that. But you just kind of imagine everything, the environment. And especially if you're competing, I like to go and look at the venue. So we just competed in that Fuji Pro. I looked at the venue. I imagined what the venue looked like. I imagined what the rafters of the ceiling looked like, what the AstroTurf looked like, what the mats looked like. I imagined everything about that environment so that when I walked into it, I was familiar with it.
That makes sense.
So you want me to keep going?
Yes. Go ahead.
The third one is the task and the timing. So these ones are really important. Obviously, we're going to be imagining rolling, right? But you're not just rolling around. You're imagining about specific positions, specific moves, specific grips that you're doing. And usually this is what I would say would help people in this time is to work on these positions and keep them sharp and think, oh, if the guy grabs my arm, I have this counter or this move. If the guy grabs my pant leg, I have this move or this counter. And I know that's not very well defined, but you can get where I'm saying that you're going to have a decision tree that you're going through with your moves. You're going to be imagining each one of these moves, and you're doing it in real time. You're not doing it in slow motion. You're not doing it in fast pace. You try to imagine as much as possible that it's happening in real time.
Okay. That's something that I have never done before, because I do, not that I known anything about it. I think, to some extent we all think about, jiu-jitsu, think about the moves that are happening, but I was never aware of doing it in real time. So what is the benefit of doing it in real time when you're thinking about these moves?
Yeah. So, like I was getting back, there's a whole bunch of theories about why imagery works, but basically you are training the nerve responses in your brain that fire to your muscles. You have certain neurons that are involved in this action, right? When you imagine things happening, let's just say the body doesn't know whether something is imagined or real. So it reacts as if it has happened when you imagine it, right? And you're actually increasing the potentiation of neurons in your brain when you're thinking about these actions. But it's all triggered based on cues in your environment. Your eye sees something, your brain automatically reacts, and then you have a reaction to it. And basically through the real-time imagery, it's mimicking what you would see during training to sharpen those reactions, to sharpen those the potentiation of the neurons that are going to go ahead and fire and say, I know that when the guy does this, I automatically go to this move.
That makes perfect sense. So what would be a good maybe like an outside of jiu-jitsu example of that, of thinking about something in real time, and if you have one?
Yeah. So a good one is when, let's say I work with baseball players, if they're a hitter or a pitcher, you have to watch kind of what the other person is doing, where the pitcher's hand is, where their release is. And if you're a hitter in baseball, you have to pay attention within the first several milliseconds of the throw. You need to be making a decision as far as where the ball is going to be. So we have to get them to imagine at that point of release how they're going to react and how they're going to respond. Another one might be, goodness gracious, in volleyball, when you have a setter that's going ahead and hitting the ball, you got to go ahead and block it or return it as a libero. You got to make a very quick decision. So you got to imagine where the ball is in the air and how you're going to respond to it, what kind of spin it has on it. And by having these real-time cues that you're seeing and automatically programming how you're going to respond, you can increase, like I said, that automatic response to those things. In jiu-jitsu, it might be even when somebody's going for a takedown. If you see them starting to go to certain grips and make a certain movement, how are you going to automatically defend that takedown? If they go for an ankle pick, posture up. If they go for a double leg, you're going to sprawl and get your underhooks. If you're going to go for an ochimata or so on, you can automatically kind of see within the first milliseconds of that movement how you're going to go ahead and respond.
And so are you using this for specific moves, or are you broad with it? Are you trying to go through an entire round in your mind?
Yeah. So we could jump ahead to the end and talk about how long we're doing it.
If you're gonna go ahead, if you're gonna get to it, we don't have to jump ahead. But
let's just make it organic. I don't have to run through the list, but yeah. So I think with that information, it really depends on how much time you have as far as how you're going to imagine these things, right? If you have 20, 30 minutes to sit down and do it, I like to do longer meditations, or imageries before I compete. I would say if I'm just doing it for general training, I usually do pretty brief, 4 or 5 minutes. So I might focus on a few positions that I want to hit in training that day. I'll do some imagery before training. It's part of a pre-performance routine that I have. We can talk about pre-performance routines if you're interested.
Yes.
But basically, it really depends on how much time you have and also how much energy you have. Because this whole imagery process, it takes a lot of mental energy. It takes some discipline. It can be boring. And then some people also can be very aroused and become kind of anxious or feel their heart racing while they're doing it. So everyone has kind of their different tolerance for doing these things. And to answer your question more succinctly, I would say you're going to be focusing on one move at a time. And just like you would in a normal fight, you have one move that you do, and then you go on, you have a counter, the opponent has a counter, and then that's when the roll happens, right? Not everything is happening. You're not going to run through a highlight reel of your best moves, but you have to make the fight organic and real like it would normally be in a roll, right?
That makes sense.
So just to get back to the acronym and finish up the last of it, we did the PETT already. We talked about the physical, making sure you look the way and feel the way that you would. Environment, we talked about the tasks that you're doing, talked about the timing in real time. We talked about the next part is LEP. This would be learning. So the point is, with learning, you're going to be doing whatever move. And I think during this opportunity of social isolation, people are going to want to be learning moves and reviewing moves that they already have. So with learning, you're going to be increasing the skills that you would normally do in a progressive way. So if you have never berimboloed before, don't imagine yourself doing the perfect berimbolo, but imagine yourself slowly working on the skills and building it up, doing a baby bolo, and then stepping up to the movement until finally you're able to do that full underneath and you take the back. That is part of it, is you just progressively build up your ability to learn that move. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
You're slowly imagining yourself working on it and improving on the specific details of that move that would allow you to be able to hit it during training.
Almost like when you are learning a move initially, right? You don't go. I mean, some people do, but they don't usually have as much success. You don't start out trying to do the perfect berimbolo. You start out just learning the movements and learning the position, right?
Yes, exactly. And then the more we can make that real, and like I said, in real time, and make it more realistic, so like our brain is starting to pick it up like we would in the real life, the more that it will kind of cement as far as the cues and how you're going to concentrate and react to those situations. If you can, imagine how you're going to feel. So in training, obviously between you and me, we're always angry at each other, trying to choke each other. So imagine those angry emotions, or if you're neutral during training or happy, you're always smiling. So imagine those emotions. And if you're doing a competition and doing an imagery for competition, you're going to feel anxious. That's normal. Yeah. So you have those emotions. And then lastly, a lot of people imagine third person. They see themselves from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. I would say you want to imagine from first person. You want to be, because that's what we're doing here, is we're basically imagining like we're in that situation. And how are you going to imagine it? It's going to be through your eyes. Uh-huh. And that's the PETLEP, which is the most empirically supported way of doing imagery.
So basically, to just real quick back to the imagining third person, you're basically saying don't imagine you're playing Fortnite, imagine you're playing Call of Duty. Is that the okay? Sure. So just making sure that we are on the same page with that. And so I just had a few kind of questions about this before we kind of move on. Is it beneficial if we, for people that maybe struggle with this, or would this be weird? I don't know. Like if you were saying, when we're talking about the physical, if you were wearing your gi, would it be beneficial to, if it were possible, maybe not specifically for this situation where people are dealing with coronavirus, like, the E being environment, would it be more beneficial for us to actually be in that environment? Like, would we actually, if we had the ability, want to be at the gym thinking through these things?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of jiu-jitsu is going to occur on the mats, and there's some stimulus value of being at your home gym. And I'm going to say, have you ever visited other gyms?
Yes, yeah.
Of course you have. Did you train better or worse at other gyms?
I feel like I don't train as well when I go somewhere else.
Right. And there's this weird thing, and it's just human nature. Um, Context has an important component to how we remember things. So, like I did this when I was in school. I would study in the room I was going to take a test. And that's because you have what we call context-dependent memory. So being in the same context will remind you to do certain things or remind you of certain information. So if you study in the room where you're going to take the test, you're going to remember that content better than, let's say, you're taking the test in a room you've never been in before. The same thing is going to happen with jiu-jitsu. So if you're learning most of your moves at your home gym, you're going to be able to remember things better if you're in that gym, where if you travel and you go to places you're not normally competing or training in, you have less of those environmental cues to help you remember things. So if you imagine yourself in your home gym, that's where you're going to be doing most of your training at, I would say that has a stimulus value in helping you remember those techniques in the future.
Okay, so I would kind of want to go from there to, is it more beneficial to, or I don't know if more beneficial is even the right term, but I guess comparing them against each other, between using imagery to learn new things or to sharpen the things that you already know.
So I think you can do both. I think right now there's a lot of free content, and thankful enough, you have BJJ Fanatics and you have Jiu-Jitsu and all these other places, and I know a lot of black belts from TAC Team are making a lot of their instructional videos free to their students because they can't come in and train, and they just want the knowledge to keep perpetuating itself. So we have these videos where it's incredible information. But I don't know about you, but for me, I'll watch part of a video, an instructional DVD, and 2 or 3 moves in, I'm like, oh, this is too much information.
Yes.
And then I can't retain any of it. So there is a certain amount that we can review moves that we already do, but I think it's part of this progress of always trying to gain more information, improve your game. It's just hard to pick up new moves. So if you watch one of these free instructionals and then engage in imagery of those moves and mentally rehearse what you just learned, you're going to be able to remember those things instead of having to be like, wait, I just watched an hour of Danaher's DVD and I don't have anything,
Yeah. But an hour of Danaher's DVD is only one move, so at least you aren't overwhelmed with too many moves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So specifically to you, how do you? I'm sure you do. Do you use this? Do you use this technique to progress at jiu-jitsu?
Yes. So I do very much a mixture of, because let's talk about how frequently you should be doing this, right? And there isn't a lot of studies that talk about how frequently things should be done as far as mental skills training. There needs to be more research done. Let's just say of the studies that have been done, 3 times a week or more has been shown to provide the most benefit. So this is something that will take mental energy. It will take practice. And I mean, this is part of my overall slant, not just because I work in sports psychology, but how much time do we spend training? How much time do we spend conditioning? How much time do we spend lifting? If you're a competitor, you're doing all these things, but we don't spend much time on the mental skills training. And, if we spend 99% of our time training jiu-jitsu, doing all these conditioning and lifting, where it depends on the athlete. But for that, certain athletes, they have more problems mentally, right? They're not able to focus and perform well in strange environments, or sometimes they're on and off. Like we see Kevin Lee in the UFC. He's extremely on sometimes and he's off other times. I think this is a good example of an athlete that could benefit from some mental skills training. So incorporating more mental skills training into our overall repertoire, depending on the athlete, could provide a lot of benefit. And 3 times a week, if it's 5 minutes a time, that's good. That's kind of what I do. I do also sometimes, as I'm getting into competition, I spend a lot more time on mental skills training. So I'd say 20 minutes is a good amount of time. And then, you build it up over time and you have a particular imaginal exposure that you're doing. So let's talk about particular applications. Obviously, during competition, you're not going to be learning new moves. You're just rehearsing moves.
Yeah.
Where if I'm kind of out of competition, we're kind of building on our game and trying to expand and learn new things because we're always progressing forward. So then I'd say then you're learning new moves at that time and rehearsing maybe moves you just learned or just saw or reviewed tape and trying to lay down new neural pathways so that you have those reactions when it comes time to train.
Okay.
Hey guys, Josh McKinney here. Just wanted to interrupt really quick and tell you about something really exciting that we have happening at simplifyingjujitsu.com. So for the first time ever, I decided it was time to start sharing my ideas of distance and guard passing online. And so if you follow me on YouTube, if you follow me on Instagram, you've been seeing that we've really been pushing these ideas. They've been getting a lot of traction. A lot of people have been excited about the simplicity of understanding distance while you were the top player in jiu-jitsu, and how much people are shocked with how much value there is with that simple understanding. There is this concept, this idea out there. We call it chest over chest, and it really is the answer to never get swept and never get submitted while on top ever again. We don't have a professionally lit, bright, in the studio instructional out yet. We will have that soon, but for right now, I wanted to give you guys a chance to at least start on these ideas. And so how we did it was we took actually a couple seminars that I have taught, and we combined them into just this chest over chest seminar. It's got Q&A, it's got live rolling footage, it's got all kinds of other things, even got some in the gym little clips to add some context and just to answer some questions that people have asked since buying the instructional. But what's really been cool about this instructional is every person that has bought has seemed to feel the need to send me an email and tell me about just how much they like it, how much it helped them simplify their jiu-jitsu. And so if that interests you, you can go to simplifyingjujitsu.com/WMACOC. I finally got the what is that called? The link memorized. But if you don't want to memorize the link, you can just check the description below and check out my chest over chest ideas, kind of just this idea of understanding distance. Also, I included the pinch in there. This is a different instructional, or the different seminar that I taught. Also very valuable, just understanding how to actually control somebody's upper body when you get good at winning distance. And so they kind of go hand in hand. That's why I kind of made sure that we kept them together. But if that interests you, be sure to check it out at simplifyingjujitsu.com. Without further ado, let's get back into this interview.
So that makes sense. So for you right now, is there something that you are specifically working, like that you've been specifically going through? What is that?
Yeah, so remember, you passed my guard. I took your back in training with the Adam Wardzinski style cross grip butterfly.
I just remember the pass for some reason. I don't know. I'm having a hard time with the imagery. Yep. I don't know if I'm too good at this imagery thing, but yeah. Continue.
So Wardzinski, and we can use this to start blending into maybe talking about other ways that you can keep expanding on your skill and how to develop that. So I've been thinking a lot about butterfly guard. I really like butterfly guard. I think it's a great guard, and Adam Wardzinski has made butterfly guard sexy again. Mm-hmm. So just imagining, he has a grip hierarchy that he does. He does a sleeve collar grip first, and then from there he'll switch to belt and grabbing underhooks, overhooks, depending on those initial grips. And Danaher has very much a similar grip hierarchy. And then by running through this hierarchy in my mind, I can start getting at those positions and start troubleshooting as far as, if the guy has certain reactions, what do I do as soon as the guy has reactions? And I'll go through that imaginal kind of pathway. Okay, I grab these grips when I first start the match, collar sleeve, I'm going to do this kind of position. And then from there, I can work through my decision tree to start developing those reactions so that I don't just get smashed my first day of training, right? If you've gone through it, you reviewed it in your mind, it's not so much trial and error that needs to happen because you've already trained your brain to do it.
Okay, so if I was, because a lot of the questions that I'm asking have been very specific for
Sure.
But just for the people that listen. So if I'm not a black belt, if I'm a white belt, would I approach this any differently, or just a lower level belt, blue belt, something like that? Would I approach this differently?
I think you're not going to have as much detail. A lot of what happens at white belt is learning, so gaining competence. So it's just reviewing certain positions, maybe how you should be in those positions, what frames you should be having, what your body should be, and then imagining, just basically how you're going to hip escape. And when you hip escape, what's going to likely happen? What frames are you going to use? How is the guy going to react? Or maybe when you're in close guard, how are you just going to open the guard? Where I would say for you, you're imagining your whole guard game, how you're going to play open guard, De La Hiva, all these things that are much more complex. And I would say what you're going to see in general is black belts. I would consider most of them have a certain level of expertise where they can think in more detail because they have more complex mental representations of moves and positions. But as you're developing this competence and not really knowing all the positions, you're focusing more on some basic things, maybe even as simple as having imagery that you do before bed. If you've gone to class and you did this one class, maintaining guard, working on Kimura, whatever it might be, but just even reviewing that position that you did that day and maybe how your rolls went and what went well, what did not go well in those rolls can help you just start to review, almost like you're reviewing the techniques like you would review anything for a test or otherwise. You're just reviewing that information and then keeping it fresh in your mind so that it can be stored in your long-term memory.
That makes sense. Do you find that you have trouble reviewing what happened in certain rounds, right? Like, because we do, you come in, you do 10 5-minute rounds, you go with, especially for us, we go with all different black belts who have all completely different games, and we want to, do you ever have that trouble? So do you ever zone in on one specifically? I know you hate me the most out of everybody we train with. So how do you kind of look at it?
Yeah, I think that's just because you choke me the most, Josh.
Oh yeah.
So I think it depends on the relationship that you have with your different partners. I know we have a really great relationship with everybody we train with. We always stop and talk about, there was this position, and maybe you pay attention enough that you realize, okay, this is where the roll went wrong. Something happened here. He flipped me over. Then you stop and you say, hey, what did you do in this position? What were we doing? And maybe going back over that position, and the partner might tell you, oh, I went for this, I had this grip, or I went for this motion. And by saying that they did a particular motion or a particular move, you can reconstruct that episode in your mind and run it over and really hate yourself later that night so that you come back all very angry to train the next day. No, but you can start troubleshooting. And I think having a good relationship with your training partner, having that mutual respect and giving them that knowledge, saying, in this position, I really like to go for this particular move, and that's what happened. And I mean, obviously that makes it so that your partner can maybe beat you next time. But in general, we're all benefiting each other, right? That's the energy that we're coming in with. So replaying it as much as possible with your partner, talking about it, what happened there. Also mentally paying attention while you're training. We go to training, and a lot of times we just go on autopilot. Yeah. And I talked a little bit about, deliberate practice, and there's this whole field in psychology called expertise. And you've heard this idea of 10,000 hours? Yeah. That's a lie. That was basically an average number that came from a study that said you had to train, 10,000 hours, and that was actually done with musicians. But it was an average number of expert musicians that they practiced 10,000 hours. So I'll get off my soapbox and just say you can train forever, but if you don't train the right way, you will never become an expert. Yeah. Yeah. And you need to learn and pay attention the whole time you're training and really be able to be deliberate about what you're doing in order to develop skill.
Is that something that you feel like that you see that's common? So I'm guessing, since you brought it up, is that something you feel like is common that maybe people aren't as conscious in their training, especially during their training. They're just training to train. They're just training with the main objective of, I just need to submit this guy and don't get submitted. And that broadness sometimes can be their demise almost when it comes to getting better.
Yeah, I think it can oftentimes depend on the person, right?
Uh-huh.
I think depending on your goals for jiu-jitsu, some people are just trying to get healthy, and you have a lot of your students that are just trying to see good fitness, and then you see the difference between those guys that want to be competitors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna say the difference between the people that become very good and the people that just kind of do it as an amateur hobby and don't ever really develop a high-level expertise is going to be how deliberate they are in training. And if they troubleshoot, and just different people have different mental sets, and I think we have a very good culture with everyone we train with. I see Watson always progressing towards, improving. He's always trying to work on something, and there's just some people that are okay with status quo.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, and this is probably a hard question to answer, but I guess you can answer it just more specifically to yourself even. Do you feel like it is more beneficial to stay on, one thing or a set of things for a period of time, or to feel like, like you're trying to learn something new a lot? What do you think?
Yeah, so I would say it comes in cycles. So for me personally, it comes in cycles. So I know I'm going to expand and be learning more broadly, and always trying to stay abreast of kind of what's going on in jiu-jitsu in general. Doing this worm guard and 50-50 and all these fancy positions that you see everyone using. You need to understand those games so that you can shut them down.
Yes.
But everyone kind of has certain positions that are best for their body type. Some people are tall and lanky, some people are short and stubby, and you're going to have certain moves that just give you better leverage based on your body type, and you have certain personality. Some people don't like to be on bottom and work their guard. Some people like to be on top, and that's just part of who they are as a person, I think. So in that vein, you have your particular game that you're going to develop, your particular propensities, your particular moves you like to do, and I would say adding to your overall game is good, but you don't want to do that right before competition. You want to cement exactly what you're going to do in competition. So we have these waves of 3 or 4 months where I just develop this expertise, and then as I go into maybe competition season, I got to cut a bunch of weight. I'm going to be super grumpy. I'm going to just focus on refining what I already do well, rather than focusing on my weaknesses, focusing on my strengths right before competition. And I think for people in general, it depends on where you are and what your goals are in jiu-jitsu. If you learn very broadly and try to overall improve, you're not going to be as good of a competitor. And I really appreciate your opinion on this, but what I've seen of competitors is the best competitors usually specialize in doing very few things very well.
And that is something that that is pretty much something I just preach on the show all the time, is to do less stuff. I think that it is really important for people. And I guess, I always talk about thinking about things on the drive home, and if you were to have trained 20 different positions and then you're driving home, you're not going to remember any of those positions. But if you had one goal, even if you failed at it 20 different times, you can at least go back in your mind on the drive home and say, hey, what went wrong here? And so that's something that I think I just like the idea of training really specifically, or not even specifically, just almost limiting your game more, so you can, it's easier to figure out what you did right and wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just in that vein, there's also a learning curve, right? So you've already learned a lot of positions, so you're going to be able to learn much quicker. Where if you're first learning a brand new position, like if I went and started doing a bunch of judo or wrestling, it's going to take me a lot longer to pick up new techniques in those domains, because I don't have a lot of what we call, expert representations. So this is the idea. The way you think about positions, the meta that you have for positions and how they come together, the blueprint in your mind when you're thinking about these things are things that you can pick up from experts that will significantly help that learning curve.
That makes sense. That makes really good sense. So kind of maybe trying to rephrase that just to make sure that I understand it. Would that be common to when somebody teaches a like conceptual thing about a position and that probably took them years and years to come upon, and that concept really helps build your whole game? It doesn't immediately that night make you a black belt at that position, but it kind of helps shape your game and you kind of learn faster from that. Would that be?
Yes, exactly. And I think certain people speak of that. So let's talk about one instance. Something like John Danaher talks about wedges in his DVDs. Mm-hmm. The idea of framing and how wedges work. And that's just a conceptual representation of how we can put certain parts of our body between our opponent to either stop them from moving or keep them farther away from us. And that's just a concept that can encompass many, many different positions, many, many different moves, but it's only one concept. Yeah. And experts, the reason why they learn quicker and the reason why they have more moves that they can do and do them more efficiently is because they have these chunks of information. It's like a program in their mind that's called a schema. They have these expert representations, and wedges is one of Danaher's as a good example of that. And I think, you could speak to many of them because you've been doing it for so long. It's, how we have certain grips or have certain positions, how we should position our hips. Should we turn the hips down, flat towards the mats or otherwise when we're trying to pass? And then by listening to these people, we can pick up these expert representations and learn much more efficiently. Mm-hmm. So, listening to your podcast is a good example of that, right? But, in this vein, I like to really watch a lot of studies online. BJJ Scout, Brandon Dorman, DPS Breakdowns, BJJ Trickster, Gamble Dub. There's so many of these guys that have free content on YouTube that you can watch during this time of social isolation, get their ideas, and then get these representations in your head so that you are more efficiently learning moves.
That makes sense. Do you think that there could be a point of diminishing returns, like meaning like I go in during this time, right? Because it's going to be hard to really test things, to really know what things are good and bad. Do you think that there could be a time where I'm just like watching every YouTube video of jiu-jitsu and it might maybe it isn't a negative to me, but I just start going from learning to learning too much?
Yeah, I think that is hard to say. That is up to the person, and it's going to be an individual thing, right? I believe that the first step of doing well in a sport is competence. And everyone has different levels of how much information they can process at any one time. I think if you're getting frustrated because you can't keep information, or it's just too much and it's mind-boggling, okay, slow down, stop what you're doing. But if you're enjoying it and you're continuing to gain information, even if you don't remember every single detail, you take it one position at a time and making the most of each day, I think it will add up over time. And just having that kind of idea that it's like you have to learn the alphabet before you can speak a language. Mm-hmm. You got to put the words together, and then you got to learn grammar and so on. It's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. It's going to take some trial and error. It's going to take some time, and everyone has a different pace in which they're going to learn. And finding out about what is your unique routine that you need to do, how much studying you need to do, how much imagery you need to do, is part of a whole mental skills kind of routine that I usually work on with athletes that I work with. And everyone needs to ultimately develop what their routine is, and always be constantly adding in and taking away so that they have a good routine built into their normal training regimen, so that they can get the most out of their athletic performance, or even just, I'm going to say underlying this assumption is we're going to have more fun if we're doing well at jiu-jitsu. And this is just one thing that we can do to help us just have more fun,
So I know that at this point, and I know just from thinking about it, like if I was listening to this, I would be yelling at my car radio saying, ask him about competition, ask him about competition prep. But we're actually time-wise, I know that opening that can of worms would be a whole episode in itself, and I don't want to overwhelm people on this because I know for me personally, I'm going to probably need to listen to this episode at least twice to really, you know what I mean? I'm having, just thinking back, I'm having trouble. We've just done so much, and there have been so many notes. I've written down stuff, but it's just very hard, right? There's just so much going on. So I just wanted kind of finishing thoughts instead of going with competition, which is where I would love to go to, but we'll have to have you on again soon in the future. I would rather go to, we kind of talked about this, but just specifically, you used the word earlier, meditation. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it, and kind of have some conversation about that, because that's something I'm very curious about.
Yeah, absolutely. So meditation. So in your life, what is meditation kind of, if you don't mind me asking, why would you meditate? Do you use it at all?
I do. I use it, for me, a lot of times I use it to sleep. I try to, like be better about, controlling my thoughts. I think anybody that, I'm sure you deal with this, anybody that wears many hats, is a business owner, trains jiu-jitsu, is a husband, is, a homeowner, just all these different things that you could be, it can cause a big fight in your head, especially when you're not doing anything, when you're not focused on a task and you're just sleeping, or you're trying to sleep and you're thinking, oh man, I forgot to sign that guy up at the gym, and Jeff passed my guard today, and did I leave the stove on? And it's just really hard. And so that's something that I try to use it for specifically. So for me, that's what I generally, with meditation, that's what I.
Yeah. And in underlying that is this mechanism called distancing. So you're able to distance yourself from your thoughts. Maybe, let's say you're having some worries about what you have to do tomorrow, or if you did everything you needed to do today. Obviously, the worries would make it harder for you to sleep. So it has some kind of secondary benefit to it. And that's what we use meditation for in sports. So I'm going to talk about my own experience. With meditation, you learn how to direct attention. And I'm going to say I could get into this whole big theory about what performance is. But if you look at an athlete that's performing well, they're in the zone, they are flowing, they are, let's say, doing their best performance, they're focused. That is the most important thing. The first step is knowledge and ability, right? If you have knowledge and ability, then the thing that will make those knowledge and abilities come out is focus. So the way that we engage in mindfulness or meditation, it trains focus. So meditation has this benefit of relaxing you, maybe getting you to de-stress. It has all these secondary benefits, but within sport, we see it as a way of training attention. And that if every time while you're meditating, you start drifting away thinking about something you have to do tomorrow, or a worry that you have, or a situation that maybe happened in the past that was awkward or uncomfortable, and then you catch yourself drifting, that is what I call one mental rep, and then come back to, let's say, focusing on your breath. By doing that maybe 10,000 times, you develop this incredible ability that while you're competing, you won't get distracted by maybe the crowd yelling at you, or having some kind of worry that the guy's going to do this or that. You can stay focused. So meditation is this incredible superpower that we can do for free. And it only takes maybe 20 minutes of boredom that you can train attention and find some incredible benefits from it. And I most athletes I work with, I tell them meditation is extremely important.
If I was going to start meditating, I've never done it before at all, and you can keep it broad or you can be specific to jiu-jitsu. But if I was going to start and I'd never done it, where would I start?
Yeah. So I would say there's a great book by this guy named George Mumford. It's called The Mindful Athlete. That's a great book that can refer you to more sources and talk about how athletes are using mindfulness. There's another guy named John Kabat-Zinn who wrote a book. He's one of the most important mindfulness kind of people in the West. He wrote a book called Full Catastrophic Living. These are two books that you can really dive into that will really help you with how you can use mindfulness and meditation to benefit you. But I would say the first step is usually guided meditation. And through guided meditation, you at least have somebody telling you how you should mentally feel and think while you're engaging in a meditation, kind of talking you through that routine. And there's a bunch of free guided meditations online. If you type in UCLA guided mindfulness online, you can find a bunch of free guided mindfulnesses on UCLA's website, and then that will be a good place to start.
Okay. So, I guess, man, at this point, okay, I'm definitely going to have you on again in the future, because as I haven't gotten through, half of the questions that I was planning on asking, I've also written down, like another half of questions. And so, we'll definitely have you on again. But I guess I'd like to finish with, if somebody was looking for, a sports specific, psychologist, how would they go about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. I would say, first of all, what we've talked about today is just kind of for educational purposes only, right? I would not say what we talked about would replace a certified or licensed professional. Just important that we say that. The next thing is there is a list of, sports psychologist is not a protected term. So any Joe Schmo that has ever played sports or thinks that they have a mental health background can pretend to be a sports psychologist. So that's a problem that's within the field.
Business idea right there. I love it. I'm in.
So if you want to find a true licensed professional, there are licensed psychologists that have a specialty in sports psychology, but I would say some of the best ones are going to have what they call a certified mental performance certificate through the Association of Applied Sports Psychologists. So it's a CMPC through AASP. What I think I'm going to do with some of these things we talked about and some of the things I referred to, I'll go ahead and send it to you, and maybe you could go ahead and distribute it on whatever kind of social medias that you have, and I can link to this kind of list of licensed professionals so that people
I can put it in the show notes for us, and we can so people can refer to that, because I know there are a lot of things that we've referenced, different videos, different websites, different books, and so I will put all that in the show notes.
Amazing. So we could put that list. Also, you're welcome to reach out to my boss, the guy I work underneath at Billiken Sports Psychological Services at St. Louis University. He has been doing sports psychology for almost 25 years and has a big team of sports psychology trainees that he works with. So welcome to reach out there. Like I said, those might be some good resources for people.
Okay, that is excellent. Okay, so before we finish, we always like to play a game. Anytime we're doing an interview, we like to play kind of a fun game. What we talked about was kind of, I feel like, kind of some mind-blowing stuff. So
very
we
nerdy.
will. Yes, exactly. It was very nerdy, but I really, really enjoyed it. Really had a lot of fun with it. But now we're going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and go a little bit Alex Trebek on you. We're going to play a game called Take It or Leave It. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, so how the game works is I make a statement, okay? So after I make that statement, you can either take it, which means you agree with it, or you can leave it. And we'll discuss why you did either. So for example, I would say cheesecake is delicious, and you would say
take it.
Oh, you like cheese? I actually don't like cheesecake, and I know it offends people, but it's one of the few things in the world that I do not that I won't eat. Not a big fan.
I hate donuts.
What?
Yeah.
Like all donuts?
Like all donuts.
Like
Yeah.
like cake donuts, like
Yes, yeah. I was beaten up by donuts when I was a child.
Okay. You know what? I I think that you should probably see a non-sports psychologist for that. I think that you should see a donut psychologist.
I should, right? Yeah. I
Yeah,
should let
and
it go.
so that's probably how I would handle that. But
Uh-huh.
that is for educational purposes only. I'm not trying to treat or diagnose your donut ailments.
Just a suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get back to the game. We're gonna start out. This has been the question of the show. Has nothing to do with jujitsu, but it has everything to do with life in the real world. Take it or leave it. Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
I'm gonna take it.
Okay, good. See, then you passed the first test. This is kind of how we see if the fans of the show will respect you or not.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if somebody says leave it and they're anti Die Hard being a Christmas movie, people pretty much just turn off the episode right there.
Well, it's kind of late for that.
Yeah, it is. And so okay, so next, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Redheads don't have souls.
Ooh. Goodness gracious. Speaking from personal experience, I'm going to take it.
Oh, he's taking it. So if you guys don't know, Jeff, and don't let this make you lose respect for him, Jeff is a redhead. Okay?
Suffer from gingivitis.
He suffers from gingivitis. But, he has done everything he can to be cool again. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's a really nice guy. He is trying to make amends for what his genetics did wrong to him.
Right. No, that's why we're doing this by audio today.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly. We were going to do we were going to do video, but we decided that people would turn off the video. They would turn it off before they heard what you had to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so take it or leave it. Junior is the worst black belt that we train with.
Ooh.
I'm not talking about jiu-jitsu. I'm talking about as a person.
I mean, we got to consider how many groin injuries that guy has had.
Exactly. And think
it's
about
like,
yeah,
beat dog, I would be mad if my groin was pulled all the time.
That's true. So maybe he does have an excuse for being so angry all the time and being so mean. I'm gonna have him on
Nice.
as long as he's okay with it, and we are gonna, he's gonna get some redemption for. I forget who injured his groin. I forget who caused that last one, but I'm pretty sure it was his own fault.
Do you have a translator scheduled so that they can translate what he's saying?
I'll translate the whole time. We're going to actually do the whole interview in Portuguese. I am almost halfway through level 1 of Duolingo.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, but I am pretty, as you would say, boa at Portuguese. So if you didn't know, okay, so I want to just finish off with this. If anybody has wants to kind of follow you on any social media, do you believe in social media? Are you anti-social media? What are you doing with it?
Yeah. So I have a brand new Twitter account. I'm going to be publishing some of my journal articles and articles that I write, and I'm going to be blogging a little bit about mental skills training periodically. And you can find me at Jeffrey Shulze, at Jeffrey Shulze, so Jeffrey, and my last name is Shulze, Shulze. And find my page on Facebook as well. Those might be some two venues that they can see maybe some mental skills, blogging, and stuff like that I'll be posting in the future. And I think depending on the conversations that we have in the future, I was definitely thinking about releasing some videos about mental skills preparation for competition, what I like to do before I go into competition that I think could really benefit some of the people in the community.
I think that would be awesome. I think that would be super beneficial for a lot of people. Do you have a specific blog name that you have, or have you started the blog yet?
I just go by Jeff Shulze.
All right. So with that being said, Jeff, thank you so much for being on, man. Is there anything you want to finish with? Anything you want to tell people?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Josh. And, I would say in general, with mental skills training, It's something that we should incorporate in a routine and find a way that we can get the most out of our sport and really enjoy it. And just, keep doing what we love. And I think right now it's kind of hard because we can't engage in these activities for self-care, and doing things that we love and being around the people that we like and choking maybe the people we don't like. Just trying to do things that we can do on a daily basis, if that means imagery or watching videos, but just trying to stay up, doing things that are pleasurable in your homes at this time can really benefit people, and just to realize that this is not going to be forever and that we will eventually get back to the mats and be able to have a good time and train jiu-jitsu again.
All right, awesome, man. Thank you.
Good talking to you, Josh.
And that is the episode. Just want to thank you guys for checking this one out. This kind of all 3 episodes that we're going to be doing on this 3 weeks of reposting. There is, no video to them. They're just all audio episodes, but there's just so much value in them that I thought, even though if you're watching on YouTube, you're looking at just pictures of us, I really thought that it would be useful and it would be helpful for people. And so I'm really glad that we have gotten this far into those 3 weeks. And next week, I told you guys about how this one is not this lighthearted episode. It is specific. It's made to help you get better. Next week's episode with the head of my affiliation, Jared, this will be a repost also. This is a very lighthearted episode, a very fun episode, and I think you guys are going to really like it and appreciate that episode that's going to be coming out. And so that is next week. Like I told you guys in the commercial, it would be awesome if you decided to never get swept or submitted again while on top. And I think the best way to do that would be to understand distance from top. And in my opinion, there is no one explaining understanding distance from top in the way of chest over chest. And this is not chest to chest. This is different. And so just understanding that if you could understand this distance, it would make your jiu-jitsu that you already do more effective. And, if your jiu-jitsu is more effective, it intuitively becomes more fun. And so maybe we can accomplish both of those tasks if you guys check out the link in the description, which is simplifyingjujitsu.com/WMACOC. And that is Watson Martial Arts Chest Over Chest. And so you can check that out. That link is in the description. And I'm sure you guys will love it. I wouldn't be pushing this to you guys if I thought that you guys would do anything other than love it and it be anything other than very useful. So that's all I have for you guys today. Hope you check out that instructional. Hope you learned something about imagery training and you're willing to even take the risk and try to get some reps doing imagery training, doing visualization stuff. And that is all I have for you guys today. I hope today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.